In at number 5 we have the Juniper Tree. One of many Brothers Grimm's tales on our list, the Juniper Tree tells the story of a wealthy couple who would pray to God every night to grant them a child. One winter, under the juniper tree in their courtyard, the wife peeled an apple. However, when doing so, she cut her finger and drops of blood fell onto the snow. This led her to wish for a child to be as white as snow and as red as blood. 6 months later, the wife became very sick from eating juniper berries and asked her husband to bury her beneath the tree. A month later, she gave birth to a baby boy, as white as snow and as red as blood. The wife died of happiness and was buried under the tree. The husband remarried and had a daughter named Marlinchen. The new wife loved Marlinchen but despised her stepson. She wanted him to have nothing and wished that Marlinchen would inherit her father's wealth instead of the stepson. One afternoon after school, the new wife planned to lure the stepson into an empty room containing a chest of apples. However, Marlinchen saw the chest and asked for one. The stepmother accepted. However, when the boy entered the room and reached for an apple, the stepmother slammed the lid on his neck, decapitating him. She then goes on to cook the boy and serve him as soup to her husband, and during dinner he states that the food is delicious. Then out of the juniper tree emerges Mist and a bird. The bird flies around the town singing a song, and on the way picks up a millstone. It returns to the home and drops the millstone on the stepmother's head, killing her. It is revealed that the son is the bird and he reunites with his family. The end. In at number 4, the Robber Bridegroom. Another Grimm Brothers tale on our list, the Robber Bridegroom begins as follows. Once upon a time there was a miller who had a beautiful daughter. Now when she came of age, he wanted her to be provided for and well married. He thought, I quote, "If a respectable suitor comes and asks for her hand in marriage, I will give her to him." Now not long after this, a suitor did come forward who seemed to be very rich. The miller, not finding any faults with the man, promised his daughter to him. Now the girl, however, did not like the suitor that much. She didn't trust him, and whenever she saw him or thought about him, she felt a sense of horror and dread. On one occasion, the man asked why she had never visited him. She responded with, "I don't know where you live." He creepily responded with, "My house is out in the dark woods." Freaky stuff. He then went on to say, "Next Sunday you must come out to me. I've already invited guests. I will make a trail of ashes that you can find your way through the woods." The day arrived and the girl prepared herself to walk through the woods to the man's house. However, she had a terrible feeling, so with her she brought peas that she scattered along the path to the right and left. She walked the whole day until she came to the middle of the woods where it was the darkest, and there stood a house by itself. She went in, but no one was there. Suddenly though, she heard a voice. Turn back, you young bride. You are in a murderer's house." The voice was seemingly coming from a bird. Once again it said, turn back, you young bride. You are in a murderer's house." Very creepy. Then she encountered an old woman who told her that people would kill her and eat her unless the old woman protected her behind a cask. Then out of nowhere, a band of robbers arrived with the young woman whom they killed and were preparing to eat. They chopped off the woman's fingers, and in the process her ring flew off, landing in the lap of the hiding woman. The old woman went on to drug the robbers, and when they fell asleep, the two women ran away, following the peas that the woman had spread. Now when the wedding day arrived, the man urged the woman to tell a story. So she said she would tell a dream she had, and proceeded to tell of the murderer's den. However, when she told the part of the story with the finger being cut off, she produced the ring, and in turn the robbers and the man were put to death. The end. Coming in at number 3, the death of the little hen. At this point I think we can accept that this entire list is going to be Brothers Grimm stories. Like, I don't know any other Germans that were writing fairy tales. So let's just move on. This fairy tale goes as follows, I quote, "One time the little hen and the little rooster went to Nut Mountain." First of all, yes, this is in the fairy tale, and no, it is not a euphemism. Anyway, back to the story. And they agreed that whoever would find a nut would share it with the other one. Now the little hen found a large nut, but wanting to eat the kernel by herself, she said nothing about it. However, the kernel was so thick that she could not swallow it down. It got stuck in her throat, and fearing that she would choke to death, she cried out, "Little rooster, I beg you to run as fast as you can to the well and get me some water, or else I'll choke to death." Now the little rooster ran to the well and asked it to give them some water, and that they'll take it to the little hen on Nut Mountain who was choking to death. However, the well demanded that the rooster runs to the bride and get some red silk from her. The rooster did just that, ran to the bride and asked for the silk to give to the well so that they could get some water to give to the hen on Nut Mountain. The bride answered that they must first run and get a wreath, and that it was caught on a willow branch. You can see where this story is going, can't you? The rooster then took off and pulled the wreath from the branch and took it to the bride, who gave him red silk, which he took to the well, and the well gave him some water, which he took to the little hen. However, when he arrived, she had already choked to death. Think that's sad? Wait till you hear what happens next. A group of animals then show up and take the distraught rooster with them to bury the hen. They pull up to an area, but something happens and the carriage they were riding and rolls back and crushes all the animals to death, except for the rooster, who sits there with the little hen and eventually grieves for so long he dies. The end. Coming in at number 2, The Strange Feast. Now this story quite literally concerns a blood sausage and a liver sausage. Yep, you guys loved the sausage in the last fairy tales list we did, so here is another. You're welcome. So a blood sausage and a liver sausage are friends, and blood sausage invites the liver sausage for a meal at her house. However, when liver sausage walks through the door, she sees all sorts of strange things. She saw many steps, and on each of them was something different. A broom and a shovel were fighting with each other on one, and a monkey with a big wound on his head on another. The liver sausage was of course frightened by all these peculiar things, but nevertheless she entered and was greeted by the blood sausage. The liver sausage began to ask about the strange things on the stairs. However, the blood sausage pretended not to hear, classic move, and made it seem as though it wasn't worth discussing. Not long after, the blood sausage left the room to go to the kitchen and take care of the food. During this time, the liver sausage began walking back and forth in the room, thinking about the strange things on the stairs, until someone appeared. She didn't know who it was, but they stated, "Let me warn you, liver sausage, you're in a bloody murderous trap. Better get out of here quickly if you value your life." The liver sausage didn't think twice and ran out the door as fast as she could. When she made it far enough away, she turned back around to look at the house and saw the blood sausage standing in the attic window with a long knife glistening in the night as though it had just been sharpened. The blood sausage then yelled out, "If I had caught you, I would have had you." And finally, coming in at number 1, Hair Corpse. This is yet another Brothers Grimm story that almost sounds like a joke, but I trust you it isn't. It is very real and very strange, so I'm gonna read this story verbatim for you to really get that full effect. I quote, "Once upon a time there was a rooster and a hen who wanted to take a journey together. So the rooster built a handsome carriage with 4 red wheels and hitched 4 mice to it. The hen climbed aboard with the rooster and they drove away together. Not long afterward they met a cat who said, 'Where are you going?' The rooster answered, 'We're on our way to Herr Korb's house.' 'Take me with you,' said the cat. The rooster answered, 'Gladly. Climb on behind so you won't fall off the front. Be careful not to get my red wheels dirty.' Roll wheels, whistle mice, we're on our way to Herr Korb's house. Then a millstone came along, then an egg, then a duck, then a pin, and finally a needle. They all climbed aboard the carriage and rode with them, but when they arrived at Herr Korb's house, he was not there. The mice pulled the carriage into the barn, the hen and the rooster flew onto a pole, the cat sat down in the fireplace and the duck in the water bucket. The egg rolled itself up in a towel, the pin stuck itself into a chair cushion, the needle jumped onto the bed in the middle of the pillow. The millstone lay down above the door. Then Herr Korbs came home. He went to the fireplace wanting to make a fire and the cat threw ashes into his face. He ran quickly into the kitchen to wash himself and the duck splashed water into his face. He wanted to dry himself off with the towel, but the egg rolled against him, broke and glued his eyes shut. Wanting to rest, he sat down in the chair and the pin pricked him. He fell into a rage and threw himself onto his bed, but when he laid his head on the pillow, the needle pricked him, causing him to scream and run out of the house. As he ran through the front door, the millstone jumped down and struck him dead. Herr Korbs must have been a very wicked man. Bad stuff. The best fairy tales always end in death, I guess. It seemed like Herr Korbs didn't really deserve that. He just wanted to come home, but he was attacked in his own home.
Kicking off the list at number 5, Charlotte's Web. Said by E.B. White himself, "I wrote this for children and to amuse myself. This is a story of a barn." I mean, he's right. The story we all grew up to know about Charlotte's Web involved a spider, a pig, a message, and a happy-ish ending. But the original story of Charlotte's Web may give you chills. E.B. White raised pigs for slaughter growing up. He always felt conflicted when it came time to kill the animals, so one pig in particular got sick, so E.B. decided to try and nurse it back to health, and he even stayed up with it all night to comfort the pig. Alarming, but kinda cute. The pig sadly did not end up surviving. Mortified by the loss of his new friend, E.B. decided to write an essay titled "The Death of a Pig," based on his time with the animal. Shortly after, E.B. noticed a spider making an egg sac in his barn. Days later, E.B. noticed that spider didn't return to its sac. So, worried about the offspring, E.B. then took the egg sac with him to New York City in an old candy box. That's disgusting. Oh, with breathing holes, of course. Days after E.B.'s arrival to New York City, the spiders hatched and crawled out of the holes in the candy box. So if that doesn't make you feel sick enough, E.B. wrote in a letter that the spiders strung tiny lines from my comb to my brush, from my brush to my mirror, and from my mirror to my nail clippers. That's the grossest thing I've ever heard. If I went over to this guy's apartment and saw tiny webs all over his toothbrush and nail clippers, I would faint. I'd be out of there. What a nightmare. I would just walk in with a hairdryer and just fire away. And if that's not gross enough, he said the spiders were so small you couldn't even see them. Nothing more comforting than hanging out with invisible spiders, guys. Hey, we're gonna do a pre-drink at EB's. We're gonna have White Claws and tiny spiders. It's gonna be sick. Roll through. The illustrator for the book wanted to give Charlotte the spider a human face that resembled the Mona Lisa. That would have been hilarious. They go to kill the spider and she's just staring back at them like... Charlotte's Web received a huge amount of praise and even landed a movie deal. What you might not know is that Charlotte's Web got a huge amount of backlash because of the fact that Charlotte dies. Spoilers. What do you think? Did the story go too far or not far enough? Let us know. Number 4, Hansel and Gretel. Growing up, I loved trick-or-treating, interacting with strangers in exchange for free candy. Hell yeah, what could possibly go wrong? Well, the popular tale from 1812 written by the Brothers Grimm featured 2 children in medieval Germany. The children had been abandoned by their parents. Lost and starving in the woods, they find a house made of gingerbread. Yummy. The original title of the book was called Roland and Maybird, which doesn't sound nearly as cool, in my opinion. My apologies to anybody named Roland. Set during the Great Famine in 1314, a father decides it's best to just abandon his kids due to the small amount of food he was able to gather. The kids end up finding their way back home with breadcrumbs, so what does he do? He just abandons them all over again. Hey, you know what they say, if at first you don't succeed, abandon your kids twice? I don't know. The lost starving kids come across a huge house made purely of gingerbread. So exhausted, the children begin to eat the house without realizing it's a trap set by a witch. That's a lot of gingerbread. I mean, I feel like once I ate the mailbox, I'd tap out. If I had a glass of milk, maybe the doorknob as well. Maybe. So once the children are captured, the witch then makes Gretel force feed her brother Hansel until he's nice and fat. And then, once all of the food is consumed, the witch would then eat Hansel. Kind of like a stuffed turkey, except disgusting. Now, during this famine, it is said that food was so hard to find that dead bodies were actually dug up out of their graves, so the remaining pieces of flesh stuck in their eye sockets and everything can be consumed by starving villagers. Ugh, could you imagine? Wow, Tom, this beef jerky's great, where'd you get it? He's just staring at you like, you don't want to know. Many versions of this dark tale have been rewritten for kids with the famine plot excluded. There have been many versions of the story, and even a movie starring Jeremy Renner and Gemma Arterton. The movie is a violent comedic take on the classic, so if you're feeling a gore-filled witch hunting film, be sure to check it out. Number 3, The Little Mermaid. Yeah, we all wish we had a crab sidekick that sang and gave you life advice, but what about being tortured by oysters 24/7? Well, the original story for The Little Mermaid, written by Hans Christian Andersen in 1837, included much more graphic details of the #sea life. This version still involved her mermaid sisters, but this time they were drowning sailors just for the fun of it, while they were singing to them. That's not cool, guys. I mean, get Monopoly, do something, play Rock Band. Stop drowning sailors, come on. And just when Ariel thought she was safe on land, every step she takes results in excruciating pains in her feet. And that just plain old sucks. Like, you know how sometimes when you're sitting on the toilet too long, maybe you're looking at memes, watching most amazing top 10 videos, something cool, and then your feet go numb for a few minutes and you can't walk? Well, imagine feeling that all the time. No thank you. Somebody get this girl some sea Uggs. Oh, and she doesn't end up getting married to the prince. He ends up choosing somebody else. And her punishment? Dancing at the wedding. How awkward is that? Congrats, guys. Super happy for you. I'll just be over here drinking wine and crying all night. Cheers. Number 2, Peter Pan. Myself and many others grew up watching Peter Pan and the Lost Boys having invisible fun food fights. The 1991 Spielberg classic titled Hook introduced most of us to the late Robin Williams. It was fun for the whole family. The amount of times I watched Hook growing up. My first word should have been bangarang, but instead it was something lame like spoon, I don't know. Before any of the fun adaptations, it actually began as a play. The play first opened in 1904 at the Duke of York's Theatre in London. It did so well that the novel arrived just 7 years later in 1911. The story about Peter Pan was much darker than we know now. The Devil Wears Prada or tights. Well, written in 1860 by James Matthew Barrie, Peter Pan was originally based off the motives of the devil himself, known to trick the minds of young children to leave their homes and never return again. Once Peter Pan tricked Wendy into joining the Lost Boys and falling in love with him, he then informed her she's more of a friend. Well, a mother figure, rather. Listen, I've been friend zoned before, but mom zoned? That's just wrong on many levels. And finally, number 1, Little Red Riding Hood. We've heard many variations of the classic tale. One version in particular I'm quite fond of. Roald Dahl's take on the classic involves most of the same plot, except when Little Red is asking the wolf questions about his appearance, the fur coat gives it all away and Little Red proceeds to pull out a pistol and shoots the wolf. Bam! Surprise, mother. She's even seen later on rocking a fancy new fur coat. Even if it's warm out, Little Red will still find a way to flex that new fit. And its original version from the 10th century, however, has a much more sinister ending. Instead of the big bad wolf pretending to be the grandmother, it's actually an ogre, and not the fun Shrek type of ogre either. This ogre tricks Little Red into consuming her grandmother whole, similar to that crazy witch in Hansel and Gretel. I mean, this dude presents a full-on buffet made out of her organs and body parts, everything. I'm talking teeth for rice, skin for steak, and blood as wine. And once all that's consumed, the ogre then eats Little Red herself. I feel like if I was eating teeth, I would know I was eating teeth. I've never had Uncle Ben's minute rice and thought, wait a minute, this feels awfully similar to my molars. Oh, yep, it's teeth. I knew it. It's teeth, guys. No one eat that rice. We're good. Oh, and blood instead of wine? Yuck. I mean, make a sangria or something out of Gam Gam. Something refreshing at least.
In at 5, Red Jacket. From user Kate, but the tired version, she said, walking with my 2-year-old in a cemetery by our house, she says, Mummy, who is that man in the red jacket by the stone house? She pointed to the mausoleum. There was no one else in the cemetery. He's waving at me. She waved back. He's coming over to talk. This is truly frightening. I've often wondered whether the innocence of a child gives them the ability to see lingering spirits, the ones that adults have become blind to through the tribulations of life. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, and whether imagination or not, this coming out of any child's mouth is creepy. In at 4, Mum. From Twitter user iWakanda, they said, my daughter was about 5 when she says, you're the best mummy I've ever had. I said, I'm the only mummy you've ever had. She looks at me and says, no, you're the 3rd one, but I like you the best. Wow. Yep. Does this girl have 2 other families she's seeing on the weekends and holidays, or is she just deeply in tune with her past lives? It's not uncommon for people to report weird dreams or memories of experiences they haven't lived or perhaps once lived in a distant time or place. However, it's not quite as common for a child to report it. Do you think that's what's happening here, or is she just letting her imagination run wild? In at 3, The Woods. From Twitter user YoungMT, they said, I was hiking alone in the woods with my son who was 7. It was eerie quiet. Out of nowhere, he says, the woods demand a sacrifice. Wow. Okay, I think what we have here is a little Damien in the making. First of all, at the age of 7, how do you know about sacrifice? Second, why do the woods require one? And third, what happened after? Is the father dead? Did the woods get their sacrifice? Did little Damien here slay everyone? I have so many questions. In at 2, The Blue House. From user Phonetics, they said, back in the day my younger brother used to tell us about his other grandparents and the blue house they used to live in. After always telling him he was making it up, he told our mother he could bring her there. So we went for a drive. And this 5-year-old little psycho gave her turn-by-turn directions for close to 45 minutes. We ended up 4 to 5 towns away at a dead-end street with an abandoned blue house. Okay, this is creepy. How did the kid know where to go? Was this story legitimate, or did the kid just send them on a wild goose chase until they found a house that matched his story? Perhaps this is another case of kids being more in tune with the spirit world, or perhaps something more sinister is going on. What do you guys think? And finally, in at number 1, I'm Dead. This last one is a 3-parter, so bear with me. From Twitter user Wendy Heard, she said, my kid's BFF started saying, I'm a boy, the second she could talk. Very upset and agitated. Her mum thought she might be trans and started reading up. Then one day, she said, I'm not a boy now. I was a boy. She starts sobbing. I miss my sister. As her language skills improved, she explained further, I'm a boy. My sister takes care of me. We walk to work at the factory every day where they make buttons. We speak Spanish. And then, she said, I'm dead. I'm dead. She starts sobbing. I'm dead because I got hit by a car. I was walking to the factory with my sister. The car hit me. It was dusty. I was dead on the dusty road. I miss my sister. Wow, okay. This sounds like a couple other numbers on our list. This kid seems to be in tune with their past lives. Perhaps they lived in the early 20s, 30s, and the trauma has remained embedded in their consciousness. However, if you don't believe in past lives and instead believe if you're dead, then perhaps this is a case of the imagination run wild once again. Kids can be enigmas, and their mind so fragile and malleable, it could be quite easy for a little splash of the past to pour in. But what do you guys think? Do you believe in past lives, or do you just believe that you're dead?